today's class, we will be discussing the resistance movement by the Vietnamese against the French education. In the last class, we had discussed the changes introduced by the French in the schools to change the Vietnamese outlook towards life. Let us take a look at the topics that we will be discussing in today's class. So, how did the teachers and students play a role in this resistance movement? What was the protest about in the Saigon native girls' school? How did schools become a place for political and cultural battles? Well, the French had introduced many changes in the schools, which portrayed Vietnamese as backward and only capable of manual labor. They glorified the colonial rule and wanted the students to know that if the French ruled Vietnam, only then can there be peace. Now, the teachers played a very important role in transferring this knowledge to the students. Vietnamese teachers quietly modified the texts and criticized what was being stated in the books. And as their numbers increased, it became very difficult for the French to keep a track of what was exactly taught in the schools. It wasn't just teachers who were an active participant. Students played an important role too. I'll tell you about one such instance where the solidarity showed by the students made the government take notice of the incident. In 1926, in the Saigon native girls' school, a Vietnamese girl was sitting in one of the front seats. She was asked to move to the back of the class so that a local French student could occupy her seat. The girl refused, which was not taken well. The principal, who was also a local French, expelled her. This decision wasn't taken well with other students. All those who protested were also expelled, which led to a series of much more protests. It resulted in the interference of the government as they didn't want this situation to escalate further. So the school was asked to take the students back. This wasn't the only issue faced by the students. As you must remember, we had discussed in our last video, the French followed a deliberate policy where the students were failed in the final examination so that they couldn't get better paid jobs. The students fought against this, as well as they were inspired by the patriotic feelings and the conviction that it was a duty of the educated to fight for the benefit of the society. These protests didn't sit well with the French as well as the traditional elite because they felt that their position was being threatened. By the 1920s, the students had started forming various political parties, such as the Party of Young Anon. As teachers and students both were an important part of the resistance against the French education, it made schools an important place for the political and cultural battles. The French believed that they could gain more control over Vietnam with the help of colonial education. They tried to change their values, culture, language, and made them believe in the superiority of the French and the inferiority of the Vietnamese. These changes made the Vietnamese intellectuals believe that they were not only losing their land, but also their identity to the French. They felt that a master-slave mentality was developing. This battle against French colonial education became part of the larger battle against colonialism and independence. Well, this was all about how the resistance against French education by the teachers and students played a role in the fight for independence. Let us take a short recap of today. The French had introduced many changes in the school books, which glorified the colonial rules, and these were modified by the Vietnamese teachers and criticized as well. One important incident where the protests by students caught the government's attention was in Saigon native girls' school in 1926. Students actively participated in the protests as they felt that it was a duty of the educated to fight for the benefit of society. The French believed that they could gain more control over Vietnam with the help of colonial education. These changes made the Vietnamese intellectuals believe that they were not only losing their land, but also their identity to the French.